34 years old. Doesn't feel that old. But all I just feel every year, it's just that I'm aging, my skin is getting worse, it's harder to keep in shape. I don't know, I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if I got old and I had like, a wizard's hat, magical powers, a staff, a bit like Gandalf and maybe not quite like that. Hey guys, I'm Luke from the Broken Meeple and this is another Top 10, and this one has come courtesy of a Patreon viewer. I put out the word that I want some more ideas for some, good top 10 lists that are a bit more unusual, a bit more sort of maybe tongue-in-cheek or just different from the norm of top 10 from X designer, boring things like that. So I put the word out, you guys came up with some great suggestions, some of which I'm going to put into action in the future, but I also put it to some of my Patreon supporters as part of the campaign that they were allowed to come up with, their own ideas as well. And so today is one that's kind of one that they suggested. It's kind of not entirely the same. They phrased it as top 10 games that stood the test of time. Well, it's kind of subjective as to what really has stood the test of time. So instead I've kind of tweaked it a little bit and gone with, to their agreement, top 10 old games. And for old, I'm talking more than 20 years old. Because some people will accuse many reviewers of being cult of the new. So the new hotness and everything, is better than all the old stuff. Personally, I think most people these days are too much like cult of the unreleased, which is essentially everything on Kickstarter that's coming out, the hype machines. So it's nice to look back and realise that some of these old games are still decent. Yeah, they may have been like, re-implemented now, or they've, certainly had new games that have kind of done what they do, but not necessarily better. And some of these old games just haven't been replaced in what they do. Some of them are just good classics. So these are my 10. For me, these are top 10 old... it's the 10 and the 20 thing that's throwing me off. For me, these are top 10 old games older than 20 years old that for me have stood the test of time. Now I gotta admit, when I was doing this list, I originally was going to do less than 10 years old, but I thought, man, that's maybe a bit too recent. And then when I decided I was going to make one that was more than 20 years old, it pretty much cut off half of my list. It's like, whoa, you can certainly see that games have improved over time, because as much as I think there are some good old games, there's a lot of garbage out there as well. A lot of garbage. But, I digress. So my number 10 is a staple abstract game, and most people wouldn't ever think of putting it on their top 10 old games list, but for me, I played this during my primary school time in a club. I played it during secondary school in a local town team. It was with a bunch of old people, funny enough, but I was playing in a pub league, and I still enjoy playing this game. It's just a shame that I can't really find anyone to play it with me these days, and I've probably lost quite a few of the tactics and strategy motifs that I have, but it's the good old-fashioned chess. Yeah, chess. What, you thought it wasn't going to appear on this list, did you? You think that's like so old and, so like ancient that no one should have it on the list? No, I enjoy chess. It's a good two-player abstract game. And the new hotness, Onitama, is essentially based on, chess as a two-player game. So, it's a lighter version of it. But I still like the advanced version. Just that classic thing of, pawns and knights, rooks, bishops, the queen, and, all the different tactics and strategies you can do. It is a pure head-to-head monstrosity. Your brain will hurt when you're up against somebody who's of like equal or better ability than you as you're trying to plan several moves ahead. I mean, it teaches a lot of good skills in playing board games in general. The ability to forward plan moves quickly without taking forever. Now, I did play it as a pub league and in a primary school chess club, and, I have played that classic style, which is you and your opponent practically in silent with the clock nearby, and I've done that style. These days, I probably would get my rear end handed to me by anyone who was decent, but I would still enjoy the game. It's just a shame, can't really find anyone to play it with me anymore, but I still give this one props. Chess. Good old-fashioned classic chess. And number 9 just recently got a new edition, but this game is as old as I think 1994, and it was a Spiel des Jahres winner, and I was thinking, old Spiel des Jahres winners, well, we'll see, are they any good, are they not? And I have come across one or two where I thought, really, this one? Not entirely sure, but then maybe that was what games were like back then. This one though, I can see why it won, because it is a really good, very light Euro game that's quite mean, but has some of the simplest rules out there. The new edition looks quite cool, the old edition looks fine as well, I would play either, but now I have one in my collection. That is, straight up Manhattan. Manhattan was 1994 Spiel des Jahres winner, and it is a very simple concept. There's your board with various cities and 9 squares in each of them. You play a card from your hand out of a hand limit of I think 4 cards, and it tells you where from your perspective you're allowed to place a building. You have different building blocks, 1, 2, 3, 4 levels high, and you just choose a block, put it on with the card. That's pretty much the rules. At the end of each round, after you've played 6 blocks, then there is a scoring for tallest tower, most towers in a particular city, and just number of towers in general. And then you do this 4 rounds, and then the game ends, total up the points. The trick is that you have to pick the 6 blocks you're going to put down ahead of time. So you've got this element of planning where you're thinking, right, do I want to start off by getting all my little ones out, or should I maybe come in strong with a couple of big ones? But then you run the risk of later on having too many of the little ones, which might not be able to get you much sway. So there's a good balancing act that you have to follow, but it's straight up very simple. The game takes about, like 30 to 60 minutes max with 2 to 4 players. Dirt simple. The rules are literally 2 pages long. So it's so easy to play. This is something I recommend for board game cafes everywhere, because you could literally leave this on the shelf, someone could pick it up and play it within about 5 minutes. They wouldn't even need someone to teach them it. That's how easy this is. Very mean though, I warn you, this is cutthroat. You are outright nabbing each other's towers, you are screwing other players, you better get used to it. But it's a short game, so why not? That's Manhattan, number 9. It deserved its Spiel des Jahres win. Now, it must be stressed that I don't own every one of these games on my list. I own a fair few of them. There are some that I won't own for various reasons, and this one I just haven't really picked up yet. I don't know if I need it in my collection. I still really enjoy it, but it's quite an expensive game to get because it's full of giant wooden blocks of various shapes and sizes. It's a dexterity game. It's been re-implemented a few times, as I think Bandu was one of the titles. And I really am a little bit scared to pronounce the name of this one, but is it Bausack? Is that how you pronounce it? B-A-U-S-A-C-K. I'm going to pronounce it Bausack. And this is a dexterity game with some light kind of bidding manipulation in it. You have these pieces of two different colours, blank and red. The red ones are really weird and dodgy shaped and hard to stack. The other ones that are just normal wood colour are easy to stack. And I think there's various ways you can play this game, but the way that I've played it is where you have these little diamond things and you essentially bid a piece, and people can sort of bid those diamonds as to whether they want to play it or whether they want to avoid it. Kind of a bit like how the no thanks bidding system works in that respect. And the idea is that you're essentially trying to play it so that you can have the easy ones to stack, but then you hopefully getting your opponents to play all the really horrible pieces. If you run out of those crystals too quickly, then suddenly you're forced to put in all these really horrible pieces on your thing. And then, other than that, it's a straight up dexterity stacking game. Stack it up, try to make sure they don't fall over. It's a simple rule set. Some of these dexterity games where you stack something, they're just getting a bit too, well, I wouldn't say too complex, but there's too much going on, or they just don't sort of tweak my interest. I know Rhino Superhero Battle, whatever it's called, is doing pretty well, and fair props to it. It's an entertaining light game more for kids. This is one that I'm happy to play with most adults. It's, just here's some shapes, stack them up. It's one that I prefer to something like, say, Junk Art and the various ones that are quite similar to this. The pieces are all good quality. There's a lot of them in that box, all lots of weird and wonderful shapes. It is quite an expensive game to get, which is why I have not picked it up yet. but I still really enjoyed, the plays that I've had of this one, where I found it either at game cafes or at conventions. Bausack, number 8. Number 7 is regarded as a classic among many gamers, even people who are barely new to games. It's had a couple of iterations throughout time. One of them is the weirdly named Perudo, which comes in like a sock with a few cups and dice in that, but I prefer the original version, the one that you only play with up to 4 players. When you add too many players, it just gets a bit ridiculous, but it's straight up Liar's Dice. And funny enough, this edition that I've got of Liar's Dice comes in a giant dice. No, I'm not going to throw it because that would kind of hurt. But, essentially the one that I've got here, it was a weird edition that came out, a little while ago, and very straight up, it is basically a bunch of little cups, some, bag of little dice, and they've all fallen everywhere. Oh god, there we go, retrieved. And that's essentially it, but it's basically a classic bluffing game. And the idea with Liar's Dice is that you will have a cup of dice, you'll roll them and look at them secretly underneath you. And then you have like several 2s, 4s, 5s, whatever, the d6s. And then what you'll do is that you will bid a certain amount of dice that you think are out in the entire field in total. So you might go 4 6s. And then the person after you has to raise the bid or raise the number on the die. So, let's say you said 3 4s. They could go 4 4s, 5 4s, 6 4s, or they could suddenly go to 3 5s, they could up the number of the dice. There's a couple of extra rules about 1s being wild and, bringing the bid down to 1. But essentially, it's a very simple dice bluffing game. And if you want a kind of example that's quite similar, think of the dice game that they play on Davy Jones's ship in Pirates of the Caribbean 2. It's similar to that, they're looking at the cup and they're bidding, they were bidding years of service in that film. You're essentially bidding the 3 4s, and then as it goes round, you'll eventually go, no, you're wrong. I challenge you. You lift up all the cups, you count how much is there, you're either right or you're wrong, laughter ensues, and it's just very simple. But I really like this one. I just prefer to cap it at a certain player count. Perudo does 6 players max. 5 or 6 I'm okay with, but it can go a little bit long for my liking. Some people I know will play Perudo and try to get as many people as they can in by using extra dice. I hate that. Really. Too many players playing Liar's Dice at the same time just gets chaotic. You've got no decent information to go on. It's not the way I want to do it. This one, I believe, allows you to do sort of up to 4 players, so it's like a 2 to 4 player game. I wouldn't necessarily play it with 2, but 4 players, 3 or 4 players, I would happily play Liar's Dice. I think it's a solid, bluffing, classic dice game. Number 7. My number 6 is regarded as probably the number 1 old game by many people out there. Most of them not even board gamers, most of them would just be card game players. It is a classic staple of the CCG era, and that is Magic the Gathering. And I know some of you would probably put this at number 1 on your old games list, and I can understand why. It is a solid game. However, I don't own this anymore. Not because I don't think the game's any good, I actually think the game is solid. I really like how Magic the Gathering plays. And at university, I used to play this all the time. I had loads of decks. I played the multiplayer versions, which were like, chaotic decks you could build. I played in tournaments, dual, one-on-one. I actually remember having some, pretty mean-spirited battles against another bloke who was, he was kind of like both of us were like really good at the game at the time. So we were both kind of rivals. He took the game way too seriously though. I remember actually getting death threats from this guy just because I actually, beat him in a tournament, a couple of times and that. And I was just there having fun, I beat him with a goblin deck that I threw together, just fast goblins, and it was against his elves, and it was a really tight battle, and I really enjoyed it, and he just overreacted and started flipping out like crazy. And there's one thing that puts me off this game, or certainly puts me off tournament play for life. The tournament scene for CCGs is outright vicious. You get some nice players out there, but my god, you get some people that just take it way too seriously. And with Magic the Gathering, this great fantasy 2-player game where you're summoning monsters and casting spells and great. I love just playing with the dual decks. The dual decks are solid. Starter decks, you don't have to worry about deck building or anything. You just grab it, open it up, junk. They're good, they're well balanced, they're actually pretty competitive now. And you just play a dual deck against somebody else's dual deck. And you have a great time. The Commander variant is okay. I like the fact that they're pre-built, so you can just buy a Commander deck and play it. It can a little bit chaotic at times, but I will play Commander. I will pretty much just play dual mode or Commander. I don't like playing tournaments. I will never play another CCG tournament ever in my life. It's just too mad to see. I mean, I don't even play LCG tournaments anymore. I got put off the Netrunner scene. I got put off the Dice Masters scene. People just take games way too seriously in tournaments, and everybody builds these decks which are like, I just want to have fun casting spells. And so, with that I can go, yeah, I'll summon this creature and then I'm going to do this cool spell later. And then the other player is like, die. Huh? What? Okay, I'll summon this one. No, that, kill it, go. It's like, what? Come on. And other times you'll go, is like, oh, I've put this little deck together. It's fun. It's goblins. I like goblins, so, put it together. Mate in 14 moves. What? It isn't my scene. And no disrespect to tournament players out there. Fair enough if that's your scene, but me, I'm done with tournaments. You might be able to convince me to do a board game tournament once in a while, but even then, I just don't like the idea that someone just takes the game too seriously. I just want to have fun. That's why I play games. So, it sounds like I'm badgering the game, and I don't mean to. Magic the Gathering is still solid, still love it. You hand me a dual deck or a commander deck, I'll enjoy playing it with you. It's worthy as my number 6. Number 5 is a big surprise. I don't even know if I put this on my top exceptions to the rule list, but if not, it really should have been, because it's a Reiner Knizia game. And whoa, I mean, I give a lot of hate on Stefan Feld games because they're just not for me. They're not my style. Knizia is kind of like actually no, he's probably the third one because I hate Martin Wallace games as well. What? But Knizia games, they're mostly just math problems. They're not thematic, But I have to admit, there are some Knizia games that I think are really good. I really like Lost Cities. I like Lost Cities. My girlfriend loves it. It's our favourite game I've taught her so far. But I like Samurai. I like Keltis was alright, for a simple light game. This is probably my favourite game he's done though, and that is, I think it was 1998 this came out. I don't know, I have to check. Can't tell. Oh no, 1995 probably. I don't know. Someone will correct me. Tigris and Euphrates. This is a solid Euro game. 2 to 4 players. I'll play it anyway. You just have to change how the tactics you use depending on the player count. But it scales really well, and it is just a straight up abstract tile game. I mean, some people try to claim this has got themes. Seriously, what you want? But you have a selection of coloured tiles and you place them on this board. They do different things based on whether it's an internal or external conflict. So you'll have your big plastic pieces that you put on as your leaders, and if your leaders clash in a city, you have an internal conflict. Cities and kingdoms can grow on the board, and then they eventually merge, and then you get an external conflict like a war. And it's abstracted to a T, but it's really cool how the mechanics work. And I love this concept. I mean, this is probably the best thing that Knizia's, I think he was the first one to do this, but it's typically his style of scoring, which is that you score the lowest of something you're going after. So in here, you've got the blue, green, red, and black colours, and you're trying to collect the little jewels, and they're your points. But you only score the lowest category. So if you Munchkin 1, it doesn't help you win the game. And this isn't the only game to do this. Several others do that. And I really like it when that scoring system is used. It's just one of those little genius things that I think, great, good scoring system, really like it. But there's a good amount of strategy in this. I love how the battles can turn out. The board state can change regularly from those conflicts. And with 2 players, it's a direct head-to-head. With 4, it's a little bit more chaotic, but it's still good fun. This edition from Fantasy Flight, was it Windrider Games? No, the Euro Classics line that they did. This edition looks the business. It's great production quality, which is why it's in my collection. And I just really enjoy it. It's a good brain burner strategy abstract. My only one flaw with it though is that you can get screwed over by a little bit of bad luck with the combats, because you effectively bid a certain amount of tiles that you're going to use in combat, and you might bid 4 tiles expecting to win, and your opponent just happens to have 5 of them. It can screw you over at the worst of times. And plus there's an element of luck from drawing tiles from the bag. But other than that, I still really like this game. So great abstract. My number 5, Tigris and Euphrates. My number 4 is essentially one giant book. That's pretty much what this game boils down to. You have got to do a lot of reading in this game, but if you like deduction games, I can't think of anything more better that feels like being a pure detective, RPG style thing. Detective RPG, this is what this feels like. This one, I think, came out in the 70s, I believe, the original edition. This is now the new Asmodee version, which is a lot better. But, there's several editions of this. I just have the original, which is Sherlock Holmes, Consulting Detective, The Thames Murder, and Other Cases. There's at least, I think, 2, maybe even 3 other ones of this. And I'm sure they're all great as well. Personally, I've just got this one because it's got like 10 cases in it. I've gone through, most of them, but it's going to take me a while before I ever finish this, and then I'll probably get another set maybe. But my God, it's a brain burner, this one. I mean, here you are solving a case that is famous to the Sherlock Holmes style storylines. I think they're real cases that he did, and the idea is that you essentially read the passage, the introduction. And then almost like a choose-your-own-adventure book, you basically go through clues, they give you numbers that correspond to entries in the book or, newspaper articles, that sort of thing. And you read the passages, you gather the information, you write down the clues, and then when you're ready to solve the case, you essentially you're asked these little questions, and depending on how well you answer them is how well you do. Now, I will stress this. There's 2 ways you can go about this. 1, you try to beat Sherlock. That is the wrong way to play this game. Seriously, to beat Sherlock in this, you have to be a clairvoyant. You have to be psychic. There is no way you can beat Sherlock in any of these cases. It's just too hard. You'd have to guess half of it or make the perfect decisions all the way through. Not gonna happen. So do it like I do it. Play it, forget Sherlock's score. He's gonna own you. Just accept it. He's Sherlock, that's why he's awesome. And just try and solve the case. If you can find out any bonus stuff, great, but just try and solve it. Did you get the right murderer for the right motive? Anything else is a bonus. But it's very thematic in how it works. I love how you've got this giant map of London, and I want to go to this location. There's a number. Is it in the book? Yes, there is. Read the passage. And it could literally be a dead end, or it could be really important. And even then, you've got this little booklet full of notable characters. And you may not need to visit them, but sometimes you might. You don't know, they're just in your address book. But they've got passages as well. They may or may not be able to help you. It's a great little storyline. And you've even got like newspaper pages that have a lot of irrelevant information on there, but sometimes have something fairly useful you should know. And you never are entirely sure what you should know. It's one of those great deduction games, but it's a brain burner. It's going to take a while to do each case. You're here for at least an hour or 2 to do this. And I don't recommend playing it with multiple players. This one is solely a solo game. Maybe I'd play it with 2. I would never play it with more than that. I just think there's too much there, too much to read, and it's not really a group party game in my opinion. But, yep, I think this is a great one. Not, it's not for everybody. I can understand why some would just think it's boring and you're just reading it, but for a good deduction game, for a kind of choose-your-own-adventure style adventure with a bit more meat to it, then this is definitely the one. And like I say, this is a new version, but the original, and this is essentially the same thing, just with some clarifications, I believe was a 1970s game. So, old, but still staying strong. Sherlock Holmes, Consulting Detective. Okay, my top 3, and this one is... Woo! Super mean. I mean, you thought Manhattan was mean earlier? You have not seen anything yet. This has got to be probably the meanest game that was on my list or even on my short list. This is just straight up meanness in the box. But it's great fun meanness. And that is the 1980 something classic. I can't remember the exact year, but I played this in the 1980s when it was called Escape from Atlantis. Now it's called Survive, bracket, Escape from Atlantis. It's essentially the same game. This is the sort of 30th anniversary reprint. So, and this came out, when did this come out? Stronghold, what does it tell me? 2010 to 2012 Stronghold game. So, I mean, 30th anniversary at that point. It's an old game. Qualifies for the list. Yeah. But, yep, 45 minutes of straight up meanness. Here, all your guys are on an island, it's slowly crumbling into the ocean, and you're trying to get them all to these neighbouring little islands for safety. Problem is, every time these islands are breaking off, you're getting sharks, giant, octopuses, whales, and sea monsters, and they're just crowding around the place. They're gobbling up all your guys. People are sending boats in the wrong direction or sending these monsters to kill you, and it's straight up. Yeah, it is straight up smacking. I mean, kids can cry when they're playing this game if they don't take losing very well. You've got to accept that people will just be straight up mean in this game. They might just gang up on you, for no reason than just to be jerks. And you've got to deal with it. But it's a short game. It's got a lot of laughter. The dolphin expansion, the mini expansions with this, I think are a must. Because the dolphins in the normal version are kind of weird the way they work in this. I prefer the dolphins in the mini expansion where they actually function more like dolphins. You've got a mini expansion for upping this to 6 players with an overcrowded rule. I think that's really cool because I think this game works with 6 players as well if you just want absolute carnage hilarity. And the mini expansion for the giant squid is take it or leave it. It's a little bit more complex, but it throws another spanner in the works because then this giant squid just goes and then starts going, I'm safe on the island, you can't touch me. Yoink. It's literally like that. It just nicks people off the islands and eats them. They're great little mini expansions, but even the base game is solid. It's just one of those you want a mean game, but you want it in a fun way, not too horrible, then Survive's the way to go. I used to play this loads in the 80s when I had the sort of flimsy plastic pieces, of different colours and that. This is a great reprint of the classic game. It's good to have it again because God knows what happened to my old 80s game. I think my mum chucked out a lot of the old games I used to play. I no longer have my... well, actually, I don't want to say anything because I might spoil what's not on the list, but I've lost a lot of those old classic 80s games, and the only way I'm ever going to find some of them again is if I find them in thrift stores or something, but or really expensive bring and buys. Still got this one though. It's here to stay. Number 3, Survive. My number 2 was probably the pioneer, get the words right, of board games. Pretty much was. I mean, this was one of the first games I think came over from Germany back in 1995. Some people will have got bored of this by now. Not me. I still think it is a classic Euro gateway game that, granted, some people will think it's had its time and it's been replaced, but you find me a Euro game that has done trading as well as this one at a gateway level. Find me one. I mean, maybe there's one you can think of out there, and I might agree with you, that is still just as good, but proper trading. And I don't just mean like the Concordia level of, I bought a salt, I sold it, I got money, yay, I traded. No, I don't mean that. I mean proper negotiation trading with other players in a multiplayer setting, so no, you can't count Jaipur, that doesn't really count, and has done it to gateway level so well. Find me them, because I want to play them. But this one is the classic. In fact, I'm going to get the proper one out because I don't really play the base set of this anymore. I play Seafarers. Yes! Catan. 1995, I believe, with the original one. I could be wrong, but yeah, we're definitely talking more than 20 years old now, and it's still a good favourite of mine. Still featured, halfway up my top 100 the last time I did it, and it's probably still going to hit my top 100 again this year. Oh god, that's going to be a lot of work. I've got to remember to do that in the summer. But Catan, still love it. It's a simple Euro game. You are just building roads and buildings and cities across a map. You roll the dice to get the resources, but what makes Catan more fun for me is just that trading aspect. So simple. You have cards, you ask people if they want to exchange, wood for sheep, the classic wood for sheep joke, and all the other wars, and you negotiate and trade with other players. Super fast, you just roll the dice, get the resources, do a bit of trading, bit of building, next turn. And it goes around nice and quick, and it's simple, easy to learn, but good fun. I really like Catan. And some of the spin-offs that they've done, I tried the Game of Thrones Catan, that was okay, but a bit convoluted for what it needed to be. I like some of the weird historical ones, they're good as well, but I don't go mad for them. Personally, I would happily just play Catan and Seafarers, and that would do me. Explorers and Pirates is okay, Cities and Knights, it's okay, but it makes it a bit too long and complex for what it really needs to be. Still fun though. And the base version of Catan I will still play. Personally, my prime way to play Catan is Catan with Seafarers with 1 or 2 modules from the Traders and Barbarians expansion, i.e. the Harbour Master, because then it makes going on the harbours a lot more interesting. The Fishermen of Catan, because then you have even more reasons to be on the coast, because you can get the fish that gets you cool bonuses and that. And I haven't actually tried the pick up and delivery mechanism from the Traders and Barbarians, but I haven't heard people really go on about it, so I'm not that fussed. Mainly I got Traders and Barbarians for those little modules that I like to use. But Catan with Seafarers, you get to sail off to different islands, the scenarios are really good. I even actually, there's a video review for it on my channel where I did the Legend of the Sea Robbers, like variant scenarios for this game. And that was good fun to play actually. They weren't too complicated, you know, a little fiddly here and there, but hopefully future ones will streamline it a bit more. And it was solid, you know, it gave a new sort of resurgence to Catan for me. But still, Catan and Seafarers, I would still happily play this game. 1995, one of the first games from Germany, one of the old classics, a lot of people still love, including me. Not quite my number one though, but certainly close. My number one, and I think a lot of people saw this one coming, particularly if you've paid attention to my top 100, because I think this is the highest old game I have in my top 100 as well. And, you know, you can think about the other games that I've had on this list, you know, about staying the test of time. I mean, let's think, you know, chess, I still think it's great, and how old's that? You know, certainly stood the test of time for me. Liar's Dice is still popular with people, even in the Perudo sense, so that's definitely happened. You know, Manhattan, the new implementation is doing fine. Maybe some people have got bored of that, but I still think it's great. Catan, still strong. It's definitely stood the test of time in my opinion. Magic the Gathering, everyone's playing that, you know, so that's keeping stores alive. So of course that's stood the test of time. Survivor's still good, Sherlock's still good. I mean, these games are popular these days, at least the vast majority of them. Maybe not so much Bausack, and I certainly haven't seen people mention Tigris and Euphrates much lately, so maybe those two are on the way out, but for me they're good. Anyway, number one, straight up negotiation game. A barrel of laughs, so many expansions. It came out, what, like 1977 or something like that? I don't know, I think it was a 70s game. It has had several new additions. I've got the Fantasy Flight version. You've probably guessed it by now. It is the extremely heavy, because I've got a lot of content, but this is a heavy game. Ooh. Cosmic Encounter. Yep, more than 20 years old. Yes, I know, it sounds like, oh, you're just going down the Tom Vassell route, you know. It's not his favourite game anymore, though. Watch his top 100. But, yeah, I love it a bit. It's certainly my favourite old game. It's just straight up, here's your alien race, you have a bunch of ships, you're trying to control opposing colonies, and it's straight up negotiation with other players. You know, the card deck tells you who you're going to attack. You know, straight up try to negotiate with the other player. You know, are you going to get into battle, or are you going to negotiate a peace treaty? Other players can be invited as allies, both offensively and defensively, and you're negotiating with them. You know, come on, serve me. I can give you this. You know, I'll be nice to you in the future. Please, you know, come on. And all that negotiation is on every single turn. You're almost always involved with what's going on, and the turns are reasonably quick because combat is literally just play a card face down, simultaneously reveal, tally the total, who's got the most, they win, loser dies, goes to the warp, winner gets a colony, or succeeds in defending their planet. And the expansions add a few extra little bonuses and different decks and hazards and stuff like that, and up the player count as well. Base set I think only goes up to 5. I wouldn't play this with 3 or 4. So the expansions are kind of a must buy just to get the player count to around 6 at least. 7 is a bit much, 8 is a bit too much. But certainly at least one expansion will allow you to play this game with 5 or 6 players, and that is the perfect player count for this. If you don't like negotiation games, you're not going to like this, so fair enough, stay away. But if, like me, you enjoy a good negotiation game with player interaction and roleplay, because that's one thing I love to do in this game. I love to roleplay the alien. I mean, I remember an 8-player game I played at a convention in somewhere near Exeter, I believe. It wasn't Bacon, it was a little mini one, I think. And it was an 8-player game, and I played a team, like two people on each team, with another alien who could read minds, and I was the Void. And I basically every time I killed ships, they were out of the game, so people feared me, and I was role-playing the Void, you know, this dark entity that nobody wants to be my friend. And I just remember the penultimate move I made before me and my partner won. I still remember it to this day. Some guy was getting really cocky about the fact that he had 14 ships on one planet. He was a race that allowed him to stockpile on one planet, I forget the name. But he had 14 ships on there. And he was like, you know, I can send this massive force to go kill you, or I can defend it with mine. You know, it's like, we're all good, yeah, you're not going to beat this ship. I had to attack green. So I deliberately attacked him, knowing I would win the combat. And the reason I knew I'd won, because I said, you know, I'm going to attack you, but, you know, we can negotiate this. You know, come on, you've got 14 ships there. I've got my 4. Do you really think I'm going to beat you? And he played his card. I can't remember. I think he tried to lie to me. So I think he played a low attack value instead of a negotiate. I played a 40. I played a 40. I completely trounced all this, like, his attack total. 14 ships out of the game. Not in the warp. Out of the game. This crippled him beyond belief. I remember it as the ultimate, like, cosmic encounter move I've ever done. And then the next turn, you know, I think the next attack I did was enough to win the game with me and my partner. And it was just a great fun game, but I just love it. I don't get it to the table as much at the moment, mainly because, you know, a lot of other players aren't as keen on it, but I've had some people say, no, we like it, we'd like to see it again. So maybe when I'm not too busy reviewing games, yeah, when's that going to ever be, I'll be able to get this one out and enjoy it. Maybe UK Games Expo, should I bring it to that? I'm sure they'll have one in the library anyway. I have yet to play this with Tom Vassell though. That I would certainly like to do. Maybe we could convince him of that. Anyway, gotta get this down because it's really heavy. Cosmic Encounter, I love it. My number 1 old game. Now, I'm not going to put up pictures of all these games because it takes ages to edit the video. But I'm just going to mention a few off the short list that I did consider. And I'm not going to include the ones that were less than 10 years, that were only 10 years or older, because I crossed them off as soon as I changed the notion of this list. So what else did I have? I considered Hare and Tortoise, cool little racing game. Texas Hold'em Poker, you know, another, you know, it's a classic, but I like Texas Hold'em Poker. I used to play in pub leagues and, you know, and stuff like that. You know, just chuck in a $5, winner takes the majority and second place gets their money back. Simple, you had a night out and the worst thing that happened was that you lost every game and spent maybe 20-25 quid on poker and cider. Did me up a treat. Can't Stop, the dice rolling push your luck game, still a good classic. And then it got a little bit more, Boulder Dash, great party game. It's beyond Boulder Dash now, but it's still Boulder Dash. It was an old party game. And then we got on to a couple more nostalgic ones for me, really, which weren't necessarily on everybody else's list, but certainly would be on mine. Hero Quest. I'm starting to wane a bit on Dungeon Crawls now, but this one I remember playing with my brother so much. It was a classic game for me and him, and I have fond memories. Battle Masters, again, the one that had this giant mat, and you play, but it was basically the miniatures pre-Warhammer. And, you know, it was great. We took up an entire living room floor with that mat and played great 2-player heads-to-head. Granted, I was a bit of a sore loser back in those days as a kid, so he probably got sick and tired of me moaning if I dice rolled bad, but that's me. I was a kid. Blood Bowl, decent. I don't know, not my favourite of the games, but it's still a good laugh. Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs, yeah, does anyone remember that one? Classic little one with the plastic T-Rexes. That was a great one. That was a nice little roller move game. And what's going on with the lights these days? And Key to the Kingdom, another classic nostalgic one for me, where the board opened out like a pop-up book and revealed different realms. It was roll and move, you battled monsters. Great little fantasy game. And that's pretty much it. And just to quickly add on to this video, as you can see, top miraculously changed. Ooh, I'm a wizard. I forgot to quickly mention about my Patreon choice. My Patreon choice was Modern Art. Yep, this old little auction game. It's very popular with a lot of people. Just straight up auctions, where you're auctioning off various works of art trying to make a profit. It's basically a small filler economic game. I get this one. I mean, some people do really like this one, and I can see why it has had a reprint recently that's doing quite well. It's not really for me, though. It's not that I think it's bad, it's just, what's one of my least favourite mechanics in board games? Auctions. What's this game? Auctions. That's pretty much the deal. It's just one that never really sung with me. It's not my style, not my mechanic, not even my theme. Well, actually I don't know. Gatherist. But even so, like I say, I respect it. I think it's a worthy Patreon choice, just not for me. Modern art. I couldn't think of many more on top of that, because as much as there are some great old games, even beyond the 20-year mark, there's a lot of stuff out there that's also pretty garbagey as well. So, we have come a long way in board games. Over the last 20 years, board gaming has taken off to a ridiculous extent, and particularly over the last 10. Going back to something like maybe 2007 onwards, board games have just gotten better and better to an extent. However, I think the trend is starting to go a little bit downwards now, though. I've got a lot of good games on my shelves, but from recent years, but there's some stuff on here I remember from like 2011 and 12 when I bought some games 4 years ago that were 11 and 12 games, and they're still in my collection of some of my favorites. Granted, some new stuff that's coming out is really good. You've only got to check out my top 100 and my top 10 to see that, but I think we're getting a lot of repetition. I think that people are trying to repeat the same old stuff we've done before and not doing enough new, not giving me exactly what I want. I want more innovation, more differentiation, really go the distance. And some games do, but not all of them do. And I still have to give credit to a lot of these games, 10 years old, 20 years old, whatever, that if you put it in front of me, I'd still love to play. And these 10 are certainly my favorites. So, let me know in the comments what your favourite old games are and why. Do you agree with this list? Were there some that you wanted to include that you didn't? I'll bet some of you have probably put Hero Quest, which is fine, because we all know the best thing about Hero Quest is... Exactly. So, without further ado, I'm going to get on with some more recording and editing. Hope you've enjoyed some recent reviews that have come back up now. There's more top 10 lists in the future. Next one, I don't know which one I'm going to choose out of top 10 turkeys or top 10 games I'd hate to teach. Probably the latter, because that was a good suggestion by some YouTube supporters, and to be fair, I think I could do quite an interesting talk on that one. So, that's it for me. Without further ado, I'll let you go. This is the Broken Meeple signing off. If you like what you hear and see, then subscribe to the YouTube channel, the podcast, and my written reviews. Take care, see you soon, and enjoy games, whether old or new. Just remember, they're still only games. Have fun, guys. Good night.